Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kircha. Coming up in today's newscast, Palestinian terrorists launched dozens of rockets into southern Israel, prompting heavy response from the IDF.
An all-new superhero is gracing the halls of Israeli hospitals.
And later, we join Israeli President Rivlin for an incredible tour down under.
Roads and schools are all closed and trains have all been stopped all across southern Israel following a full night and day of rockets and mortars launched at southern Israeli communities.
And it's all been done at the hands of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terror group in the Gaza Strip. So the IDF is now opening all of its shelters in the region ahead of yet another predicted round of violence. At least 30 rockets have been sent over into Israeli territory on Sunday night, with another 14 launched later today on Monday. Half of the rockets being launched at civilian Israeli communities were intercepted by the Iron Dome defenses, while the rest fell into open areas. Is retaliating with force, attacking Islamic Jihad targets across the Strip and in Syria. And 6 terror fighters are reported dead, with several more injured, although the Islamic Jihad terror group has only confirmed 2 killed. Still, the IDF is also confirming the destruction of a PIJ headquarters in Syria that was allegedly used to develop and manufacture weapons, as well as military bases and weapon storehouses across the Gaza Strip. Now, this latest uptick in violence started after the IDF shot at and killed a Palestinian terrorist along the border, who was in the middle of planting an explosive. Israel then sent in an armored bulldozer to recover the body, however, which is angering the Islamic Jihad terror group that's claimed the terrorist as a member. Now, the countdown continues. It's just 8 days until Israel's politically exhausted citizens return to the ballot boxes for the 3rd time in only 11 months.
But for the first time this election cycle, the Prime Minister's Likud party has overtaken its blue and white competitors in the polls. According to the latest polls by both the major broadcasters, the Likud party is now expected to take 34 to 35 seats in the upcoming Knesset, up from 33 in the poll last week. Blue and white, on the other hand, has dropped 2 to 33 to 34. Now, why is this happening, though? Well, the minor shift seems to be in response to the announcement of formal investigations into Israeli cyber tech company Fifth Dimension, which Blue-White Chairman Benny Gantz presided over until it filed for bankruptcy. But again, ultimately, this is expected to have little effect on the stalemate between the right and the left. The right and religious parties are still predicted to earn 57 seats, to the left and Arab parties is 50 seats, both of which are shy of the 61 necessary to form a coalition. Now, in the meantime, the biggest losers in this crisis are not the parties, of course, but the Israeli public. And not just the public, but the public's most vulnerable. Since 2018, the budget and government has sat frozen, and that freeze has passed on to plans to build classrooms, to update services for the disabled, to curb domestic violence, and to boost healthcare in poor communities. Everything the country needs most.
Well, moving on, as Israel prepares for its 3rd consecutive election next week, the United States Democratic Party is also gearing up for a vote of its own. But what are the major differences between the Israeli and the American election systems, and how does that translate into policy and governance? Joining us to discuss is Gideon Haley, the founder and president of the Jerusalem-Washington Center. So before we get into the answers to these questions, let's talk about the rocket fire that we've been seeing over the last 24 hours. Dozens of rockets coming from the Gaza Strip into Israeli territory. Why is this happening right now, and is it related to the elections?
Well, I think the Palestinian terrorists and Hamas, I think they know that right before the elections, the government is between a rock and a hard place. So when they start firing rockets, on the one hand, if the government decides to embark on a large-scale invasion, so the other party would say, you know, they're doing it as an election ploy to divert attention, so they look strong, so everybody thinks that they should be the ones in government. And if they don't do anything, then the government looks weak, and it looks, you know, it looks like it can't protect its citizens, which is obviously not so good for the ruling party. So this happens oftentimes in election season because. Right. Hamas, they understand Israeli politics.
But then this is really just looking and saying, hey, this is my chance to do the maximum amount of damage with the least repercussion. It's not really to do with either political party to support or you know, attack either one side.
I don't think so. We also don't know how blue and white would respond. So I don't think it has to do with any particular political party.
All right. Well, and On that note, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the differences right now that we're seeing in the Israeli electoral system and what is happening in Democratic primaries, the Democrats and the Republicans in the upcoming national elections.
Well, the American system has a different system than the Israeli system because you really do have a true separation of powers. The executive is voted in by direct election, so the president is voted in by the people, and then you have a bicameral legislator, the Senate and the House of Representatives, which is voted in separately by the people. But putting the Senate aside for a second, the House of Representatives is voted in per district based on a certain amount of population, which is about 750,000 per district.
Right.
Whereas the Israeli system, we don't elect a person, we elect a party. Mm-hmm. So we have about 6 or 7, 8 parties that are running, and you're not going to elect one person, you vote for a whole party slate, which means, by the way, that the people in Israel are voting, the parties are more based on ideology as opposed to members of Congress who are representing a certain district where they're supposed to fix certain problems and represent a certain group of people.
So how do these things translate into governance, which is kind of what we were touching on before? For example, accountability.
And the fact that we're having 3 elections in a row in
and
Israel.
And the fact that we're having 3 elections right now, yeah.
Well, I think it was comical. You had Donald Trump from the Oval Office saying, they have elections in Israel, but nobody gets elected. I don't understand what's going on there. So in America, there are elections and there are results and there's a government, meaning that when Congress is elected, the House of Representatives, for example, so the majority party or the people caucusing with the majority party, they're the ones controlling the House of Representatives, and the same thing with the Senate. And then you have a president, and if the president is from one party and the Congress is from another party, they have to learn to work together and get along. Whereas Israel, basically, there's no real separation of powers between the legislative and executive branch. We have a parliamentary system, so the prime minister is basically the outcome of a coalition within the legislative branch.
Right. In other words, even if you have more votes, even if your party gets more votes, you still have to you have to make your bed with some other parties, right?
Also, you get what you get in terms of the individuals who make it into the government.
Right.
You vote for these ideological parties, but ultimately who runs that party is not up to you.
Right. Yeah, there's a few things in. We're having 3 elections. We might even have 4 elections in Israel now. There's a few potential things that could be changed that could make such a scenario, that it wouldn't repeat itself. So the first thing is that in America, politicians finance their own campaigns. They have to go out and get campaign donations, and that's not an easy thing. In Israel, the government finances the campaigns of the politicians, which also gives an advantage to those politicians already in the Knesset, because new politicians do not get financing unless they actually succeed in being elected to the Knesset. The second thing is that in Israel, the people who are making the decisions have the least accountability. So, for example, when Prime Minister Netanyahu or when General Gantz decides to have another election round, so if their party does worse, they're not the ones who are going to lose their seats. It's going to be numbers 31, 32, and 33. So you have a system where the ones who are making the decisions actually are not being held accountable.
All right. Well, we could go on. We could stay in this conversation for a lot longer, especially if it's up to me. But unfortunately, we do have to move on. The elections are just 8 days away, right?
They're quickly approaching, but don't worry. It sounds like we'll have another one.
Yeah.
Gideon, thank you so much for coming in.
Sure.
All right, moving on. The second case of coronavirus has now been diagnosed in Israel. And it happens to be one of the Israelis who has just returned to the country after being quarantined for 2 weeks on the infamous Diamond Princess cruise ship off of Japan. Now, the health ministry says that the patient is in isolation and under observation. This comes after the first case of coronavirus was announced in Israel on Friday. That patient was also among the 11 Israelis allowed off of the Diamond Princess ship in Yokohama, Japan, where over 170 people were diagnosed with the disease. 15 Israelis were on that ship, and 4 contracted the illness and are still being treated in special medical centers in Japan. Of the 11 who flew back to Israel, 2 were ultimately diagnosed with the coronavirus, despite having been tested free of the virus prior to arrival. This is why Israel is now cracking down on foreign entry, despite the damage it may cause to diplomatic relations.
קודם כל אנחנו מחמירים את הכניסה לישראל ממדינות נוספות. היום אנחנו נוסיף את אוסטרליה ואיטליה. בעת הצורך אנחנו נוסיף מדינות אחרות. אמרתי, היערכות יתר עדיפה על היערכות חסר. ישראל נהגה עד היום בצורה יותר מחמירה מכל המדינות, ואנחנו נמשיך לעשות מה שצריך כדי לשמור, למנוע את ההתפשטות של הנגיף בישראל.
Israel's now banning foreigners from competing in the Tel Aviv marathon over fears of a coronavirus outbreak at the event. The municipality says it will be fully refunding the tickets of athletes that were planning on coming from abroad, but the 40,000 local runners who have signed up will be allowed to take part in the event on Friday. Over the weekend, South Korea announced that some of its nationals who had recently been in Israel were found to be infected with the coronavirus, sparking panic and sending hundreds of Israelis into quarantine. A South Korean airliner that landed in Israel on Saturday evening has been sent back to Seoul with its passengers after the 12 Israelis on board were evacuated and quarantined. South Korea has expressed great anger with Israel over the move, but Israel is sticking to its guns and is even warning jail time to Israelis who don't adhere to health guidelines.
אנחנו פרסמנו הנחיות גם לישראלים שחוזרים ארצה, ואנחנו דורשים עמידה קפדנית בהנחיות הללו, ואנחנו מפרסמים הנחיות לציבור בישראל, ואנחנו גם כאן דורשים מהציבור לגלות אחריות מרבית, וכל אחד שימלא אחר הוראות שניתנות על ידי משרד הבריאות.
The coronavirus has killed over 2,400 people and infected tens of thousands since the start of its spread in December. As patients worldwide are increasing, some virus clusters have shown to link to China, and experts are struggling to figure out where they started. The disease has most recently gained foothold in Italy and Iran, where collectively almost 200 cases have been diagnosed. All right, now with coronavirus increasingly on everyone's mind, two dangers have begun to really set in. One is, of course, the real danger of contracting coronavirus, but the second is actually hypochondria. But what is so dangerous about people just thinking that they become infected by the virus? Well, here with the answer is Israeli psychologist Dr. Camila Folkosh-Lavan. So, what is so wrong with being cautious? You know, everyone here has said they have a cough and all of a sudden they're like, do I have the coronavirus? Should I be worried about this? What's wrong with that thinking process?
Let's lay out this whole entire thing a little bit more to kind of clarify what is actually going on, because as we all know, in the media, it's everywhere. Am I going to die? Am I going to live? Who's going to die? Why is they going to die, right?
Yeah.
So I want to go back a little bit in history. If we remember MERS, which is also a type of coronavirus.
SARS,
first was MERS SARS in 2002,
right.
Which is 10% mortality rate. MERS later on 2012, 34% mortality rate. Ebola is running around 40% mortality rate just in 2016. And this one is only 2%. And of course, nobody wants to be the 2%, but it's only 2%. So there's, of course, a danger of getting infected, but it's very important to understand that people that get infected are generally someone with a already pre-existing condition with the immune system perhaps compromised to begin with. Children either do not get infected at all, or if they do, they do not die. We also know that 20% plus minus already of people that were infected actually are healthy. So this is not anything different than many other viruses or illnesses, and many of them are amongst us that are way worse, except it's not in the media.
Some people are saying that the common flu is worse than the coronavirus, right?
So those are actually the statistics I wanted to throw at you. Yeah, I mean, the common flu every year annually infects millions and kills tens of thousands. So arguably it's much more dangerous than coronavirus. So why are people so much more worried about the coronavirus?
Because flu is about 1% mortality rate, as this is 2%. So technically it's P2.
So that rate has actually dropped also since February to less than 1%.
Exactly. So this, I think to me it's a media kind of created panic, and I think one of the reasons is because it is contracted so easily, and I think we should be careful, and it's very smart to be careful about it, not to spread it, because it is a very infectious disease, and no one wants to, again, be even one person is too much. So 2% of a lot of people is a lot of people. So if you control on how many actually get exposed and hopefully will not catch it, so that's already less. Yes, but should be in proportion.
Right. So I guess the idea here, though, is how do you address kind of the mental stress that comes around hearing that this virus is going to kill you?
To what degree is the hysteria okay? justified.
Right. I think that it's very important to be proactive in your own knowledge, not to just kind of be spoon-fed, so to speak.
Right.
Yes. Go out there. Information is there. Go to the World Health Organization. Go to the research articles. See what the statistics are. Like, for example, they talk about, there's no medicine for this. Of course, there's no medicine for this. It's a virus. That's how viruses work. There are very few viruses for which there is a medicine. Usually, it's just for the symptoms that we're trying to control and wait it out until the body battles the whole thing out. Also with the flu, every year they're talking about like it's a different virus. Of course, every year it's a different virus.
Right.
That's the course of a virus. So like find out what this really means and what the other side of the whole picture is, because otherwise it's very, very scary. And
don't just listen to the headlines, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, and
I guess
ideally
we
just
should
stop talking
apologize
about this
for-
as much as you're talking about it, because I know I woke up with a sore throat and I was like, what's gonna happen to me?
Now
But
you know
everything's
what's
okay.
fun to do though now?
Yeah, I know. Oh no. No coughing in public, guys. No coughing in public.
Kamila,
Thank you for
thank you
joining
so
us,
much.
Kamila.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. All right, now get this. Israel is expressing outrage at yet another carnival in Belgium that's displaying anti-Semitic caricatures of Jewish people. And ILTV's Nittany Manson has the details on this story. Nittany, what's up?
Hi. So the Oost Carnival is held every year just about 10 miles west of Brussels. And this year about 80,000 people attended, but the carnival has been coming under fire for ridiculing ethnic minorities in its parade, and more specifically the Jewish people.
Yeah, I mean, I actually remember last year the crazy floats of Jewish rabbis with hooked noses and rats on their shoulders and holding bags of money. But this year I heard it's actually even crazier.
Yeah, well, this year caricatures of Jews depicting them as ants were prominently displayed. Anti-Semitic imagery has often associated Jews with vermin, but this display was apparently meant to be a pun, referencing how the Dutch word for Western Wall sounds like a complaining ant.
Complaining ant.
That's-
What a great excuse.
Yeah, it's very
So odd.
convenient.
Yeah, it's completely absurd. There were even carnival goers wearing exaggerated costumes of suits favored by ultra-Orthodox men with fake hooked noses, and there were also people dressed up as Nazis.
Now, it seems like anti-Semitic expression was more common this year than last year. Could this be a backlash effect following the aftermath of last year's carnival?
Well, in December, UNESCO pulled its endorsement of the Oost Carnival as a World Heritage event. And celebrities have continued to back out of their appearances, with Oost's mayor as well, who was repeatedly defended the parade displays. He is a member of the right-wing New Flemish Alliance, and he claims that in the context of the carnival, the displays aren't actually anti-Semitic.
So how is Israel responding right now?
Well, Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz is calling for the hateful event to be banned. And meanwhile, the Prime Minister of Belgium is also speaking out against the event, she being Jewish herself. And she says the caricatures of Jews damage the country's values and its reputation. And this is really the harshest rebuke yet by Belgium's highest elected official.
All right, Nittany, well, thanks for joining us with the update on this story. It's just absurd that this continues. I can't believe
It's
it.
a little disgusting.
All right.
Now moving on to lighter news, the backbone of any really good hospital often lies in the nursing staff, but our nurses need help. So good thing Israeli innovations are on the way.
Our doctors and nurses can't be everywhere, says Ahuva Weiss-Meilik from the iMedata team at Tel Aviv's Soraski Medical Center. So to help keep up the standard of care, Meilik and her team have developed the AI-powered Super Nurse. And this incredible new medical superhero combines AI, advanced learning algorithms, sensors, and cameras to not only monitor patients' vitals across a huge facility, but to predict their rates of recovery or decline. In fact, by collecting and monitoring big data, iMedata's Super Nurse often knows when patients are about to take a turn for the worse hours before they feel any different, and the program then notifies hospital staff of any changes. But the iMedata team couldn't have done it alone either. Two Israeli startups also partnered up with Meilik's group to bring the Super Nurse to life. AnyVision of Holon, which created the software behind the cameras, and BioBeat from Petah Tikva, which developed the tech inside the sensors. Finally, though, as for the rollout of this program, Soraski Medical Hospital is currently running a trial with the Super Nurse on 24 patients who've all given express consent to be monitored.
All right, now many of us shop for our products online nowadays, and looking for cheap deals on makeup, skincare products, and even shampoo can be a good thing, but how many of us really know the ingredients in the products that we use?
Yeah, well, an all-new Israeli tech is helping us choose safe products, and ILTV's Manuel Kadosh has all the details. Emmanuel, take us away.
Hey guys, so according to an American study done in 2018, the frequent use of specific cosmetic products might impact negatively on health, especially in women. The study actually says that there is a direct link between the use of cosmetics, among other things, to an increased risk of breast cancer.
wow.
So while a lot of us have become more aware and try to use clean beauty products, and it's, become a huge trend now, that doesn't mean that we know if the products we are using are actually safer or less harmful. But now a new Israeli company might be able to help us out.
All right, now I for sure don't know anything about the ingredients in my products. So how does this new technology work?
All right, well, I'd like to think that I know what's in my products, but I really probably don't. Now, the company is called Clearia, and it's basically a free web browser plugin that detects the ingredients of various products and provides a complete description of any health hazards attributed to the ingredients from authorities, including the World Health Organization.
All right, but each country has their own set of hazardous ingredients.
That's right. So, for example, the FDA's list of prohibited substances for use in cosmetics contains only 10 substances in comparison to the EU's, which bans the use of more than 1,300 ingredients. So Clearia is able to actually identify thousands of contents that are classified as toxic by regulatory bodies or even scientific research.
Wow. First of all, yeah, it's amazing. But I didn't even realize that the American list is so dramatic, so much smaller than the EU's, which sounds so strange to me considering I feel like I constantly see beauty bloggers talking about clean products and things like that. So how does Clearia work exactly?
Right, so like you said, many bloggers and influencers are actively trying to change the FDA list to be more aware of all the toxic ingredients that people are unaware of, especially in products for babies and things like that. So Clearia is really making it a lot easier for us as consumers. Basically, while you're browsing for makeup, skincare, cleaning, or baby products, the plugin reads the list of ingredients, cross-links the names of the contents with toxins list, and then displays a detailed alert if necessary.
Wow, we were actually trying this earlier with products that Emmanuel and I both use daily, and it was not helping her anxiety.
No.
I
I full on went into a rabbit hole of all the products in my
you were
bathroom
freaking out.
that I put on my skin every single day, and it almost made me cry, actually. Like, I can't trust anything anymore.
Yeah, and there is something that I want to say, which is that sometimes it actually tells you what some of the toxins can do in a negative way,
really
like affect your
frightening.
reproductive system.
Yeah.
So it's a bit scary.
All right, well, this new tech is honestly going to help a lot of people more ideally than it will make them anxious.
Yeah, I hope so, yeah.
And we don't always have the time to research on their own.
Definitely.
And, in order to make these informed decisions. So this is really going to be a game changer. I'm going to go look it up. I know I get makeup for the show. It's this is interesting.
I know.
Me too.
Now we're all going to be going down that rabbit hole.
Seriously, Emmanuel, thank you so much.
Of course.
All right, moving on. Israeli President Rivlin is currently in Australia as part of the first visit down under by an Israeli head of state in the last 15 years. And he's been meeting with members of the Jewish community, with Australian officials, but perhaps most importantly, he has had the chance to meet some of the koalas and kangaroos that were impacted by the massive Australian bushfires over the past 2 months. Take a look.
תשומת לב המאוד מיוחדת של האזרחים באוסטרליה, ואנחנו בהחלט יכולים להיות גם במישור זה מאוד גאים בעובדה שאנחנו מקיימים את כל הדרישות הזואולוגיות בכל מה שקשור לשימת לב לטבע ולדאגה לחיות.
Staggering 1 billion animals are estimated to have been killed in the wildfires in Australia, and although the flames have finally ended, the aftermath hasn't been simple. Rivlin was clearly impressed by the work being done at the Taronga Zoo in Sydney, Australia, where they say that the damage from the fire was so severe that most of the animals they're treating won't actually be able to return to their natural habitat for another 12 years. This is devastating.
Yeah, it's devastating, but it was exciting to see Rivlin,
with all the marsupials.
Yeah, I know. Touching the koalas. All right, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy and cool with lows of roughly 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius. But then tomorrow the rains return in with similarly cold weather. The high is expected to be just 61 or 16 degrees Celsius. And now before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel.
This is the correct way to eat spaghetti without spilling. without that splatter on your shirt. Come on, this is genius.
Yeah, but it just looks so much less enjoyable. I mean, it is genius. I have to say
this is some brilliant stuff right here.
That is very effective. I'm not surprised that that's being shared in Israel.
I only wish we'd have thought of it first.
All
but
right.
that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.45 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Aaron Portis.
And I'm Natasha Kirchak. Thanks for watching.